Alrighty, so hello and welcome everyone, and we are about to get into what I call soul washing. So this is also a service in which that I provide during my art therapy spiritual retreats. So in a current video, you saw me doing my son's hair. I have a channel to where it's dedicated to the work in which that I do on his hair, and it is also somewhat of my autism awareness channel as well. So today is my son's father's birthday, and well, we have kind of actually been celebrating ever since the first of the month, and he got his gift early. So I just kind of wanted to know, like what I could do for him, today on his birthday. There are a lot of things that he wants to do on his own. So, he says, well, you can give me a pedicure. Okay, so it's not an official pedicure. This is more so of what I call my soul washing. Okay, so the bottom of our feet are soles. My north node is in Pisces. Pisces rules the feet. So through servicing the feet, I learned how I could wash individuals' souls. Okay? So you know how they say brainwash, you got to wash your brain. Okay, so this is a way in which that we wash the soul as well. Now, when we say soul, it's S-O-L-E. S-O-U-L is the heart. Okay? So there is polarity and duality within the soul. And so I have found a way as to how to bring more temperance, relaxation to the heart without actually having to touch the heart. Okay? So, Dad has been having a couple of things on his mind. One day he tells me, he says, I don't want to hear no inspiration. Okay? That's not like him. Everybody needs a little inspiration. I said, oh, is something a little different going on? And, he's giving off a lot of heat. It's like his soul is on fire. Now, the thing is that Dad doesn't get into the things that I'm into. Of course, he thinks that I'm weird. So, it's challenging for me to come up with ways as to how to help him spiritually. So to make a long story short, I pretty much have to practicalize things. Okay, so I'm going to tell you towards the end of the video, when I'm lotioning down his feet, there is a special oil that I have. It is actually oregano oil. It's homemade oregano oil in which that I made myself. Okay, so during the time to where I was in my earlier journey of my self-discovery, I discovered my connection to the soul, the bottom of the feet. And then, of course, like I said, because I'm a Pisces North Node, Pisces rules the feet. I was guided to a store community to get oregano oil, and I couldn't understand why. Okay, so I was guided to anoint my feet with the oil and to ground, because during that time I was having a hard time with grounding between reality. Okay, so that was a method in which that I would use to help me ground. Also, well, when it comes to him, we're using water, so it's real hot with him. There's a lot of like discontentment within his movement, so it has a lot to do with energy, emotion. Okay, so we take a dip into the water. Okay. Okay, so it's not, I'm not oiling his soles and then we're grounding. There's work in which that he needs help and support with, both within the actions that he takes within his life daily, as well as the things in which that he's feeling. Everybody is not in touch with their feelings or emotions. A lot of individuals, especially men, or women who are the emotional avoidant, They spend a lot of time in their heads. And so we're trying to process our emotions mentally. Okay? But sometimes your emotions are trying to communicate something to you as well. But everybody doesn't understand that, sometimes you just have to sit in your emotions to understand what is actually going on with you. So that's kind of a way in which that I experience being enlightened. Sometimes with being enlightened, it has a lot to do with working with your hands. Sometimes it has a lot to do with being amongst nature, being under the sun, being alone. In the earlier part of my journey, I would go out on a lot of rainy or stormy days. And I would find a place to sit. More so, I would sit under a tree. And this was a way in which that I would manifest myself finding peace within the storm. Okay, so sometimes you can just be still and you can be enlightened as well. All right, but for some individuals, they're not into this. They don't think that this is something in which that will work or that can help them. Okay, so with me embodying a lot of the things in which that I know, cultivating the energy, when it comes to me, individuals really don't have to do the work. More so, all they really have to do is experience me. Okay, and so everything that I have been through, everything in which that I am knowledgeable of, the things that I have put into practice, my many journeys, whatever I give my energy to will guide as to what will be helpful for an individual. You will start to experience epiphanies, realizations, and you will become enlightened to certain things. Okay, so without further ado, I'm not going to talk you to death. All right, so thank you and enjoy the rest of our video.